Thank you very much. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Good to be back here in New Hampshire. I was on my way up here this morning, and my son, Patrick, who's 14, texted me. He's at school, and he said to me, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm on my way to New Hampshire." And he's a bit of a wise guy. I don't know where that comes from. He said, "Your new home state." So I'm happy to be back. We've been up here a few days this week. Had a really great time in Londonderry on Wednesday. Had a town hall meeting, and I see some familiar faces in here who were there on Wednesday, and appreciate so many of you coming. I want to spend most of the time taking questions from you, but I'll just say a couple of things off the top. First is I went to St. A's on Tuesday and gave a speech on entitlement reform. And the speech I gave on entitlement reform is very simple and very direct. 71% of the federal budget is now spent on entitlements compared to 26% 50 years ago. If anybody comes up on this stage and wants to talk to you about national defense, wants to talk to you about education, research and development, tax cuts, or anything else involving the federal government, you should ask them what they're going to do on entitlements. Because if they're not going to do something to fix that problem, we're not going to be able to deal with any of the other problems or opportunities that we have in this country. I'm used to this because when I got to New Jersey on a $29 billion budget, we had an $11 billion deficit. And my Democratic legislature sent me a tax increase, one of 5 they've sent me. Of all 5 I vetoed, and we balanced that budget, an $11 billion deficit, by cutting 800 programs in New Jersey in order to balance that budget. There are ways that we can put our fiscal house in order in this country, and we need to. And everybody who is considering running for President of the United States should have to answer for you what they're going to do regarding the cost of entitlement programs in our country and how they're going to make it fair for everybody, not just for one generation, but for all generations. You'll notice that the President hasn't talked about this for 8 years. From the day he announced in 2007 to this very day, he doesn't talk about it. The reason he doesn't talk about it is because there's not some short, pithy answer that you can read off a teleprompter to tell you what to do. The reason he hasn't talked about it is the same reason we have the problems we have all over the world. Iran moving towards a nuclear weapon. Syria on fire. Libya on fire. Egypt under martial law. Troubles all across the world. Vladimir Putin charging into Eastern Europe. The reason for this is because the people around the world know the same thing that the people in the United States know, that we have a weak president who has weakened our country, and they are taking advantage of that in every way they possibly can. We can no longer afford to have weakness in the Oval Office. We need to have strength and clarity and hard truths, and that's why I started by talking about entitlements. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and let me ask you this. Why would I talk about those things if they weren't true? There is no political advantage to talking about those issues. The reason you talk about them is because you want to really make suggestions that will help to solve the problems that our country confronts and, just as importantly, take advantage of the extraordinary opportunities that we have. We have extraordinary opportunities as a country. We should be simplifying our tax system and lowering taxes for corporations and for individuals so that we can get economic growth. This president takes victory laps about 2 and 2.5% GDP growth. Let him go into the families who have children graduating from college and can't find a job, saddled with enormous debt, and feeling like we may be the first generation that actually leaves America a weaker, lesser place for the next generation than what was left to us. The only reason you should consider running for president is if you want to change that, if you want to turn that around, if you want America to be a leader in the world again, if you want us to get our own house in order so that other nations once again want to emulate us. And we need to work together. As Republicans, we need to work together. And then we have to work together when we get to Washington to solve these problems. The American people are anxious. They're filled with anxiety, not anger. They're worried about their country, and they should be. And the reason for that is absolutely feckless leadership by this president. All he cares now is about his legacy and his library, the two L's. The two L's for Barack Obama is all that's left, legacy and library. He doesn't care about anything else. And I'll just end with this and take your questions. I think it's a national disgrace when the President of the United States sits down and considers taking Cuba off the terrorist watch list, when in my state, a woman named Joanne Chesimard murdered a state trooper 40 years ago in New Jersey, was tried and convicted, sent to prison, broken out of prison, escaped to Cuba, and the Castro regime for 40 years has paid her, harbored her, while this trooper's widow and his children live in pain in New Jersey. She's on the FBI's domestic terrorist watch list, and he wants to take them off the terrorism watch list while they harbor this woman. That's why I say the two L's are all he cares about. Because if you didn't care about your legacy, you would do the right thing. And if Cuba wants normalized relations with the United States, they should act like a civilized country. You know, some people say I'm too blunt and I'm too direct and too straightforward. I think we could use a little bit of that in Washington, D.C. I'll end with this. You may not always agree with every word that comes out of my mouth, but I will guarantee you one thing. You will never have to wonder what I'm thinking. You will never have to wonder what I'm feeling. And you will never have to wonder what direction I am leading my state or any other leadership position I ever get an opportunity to pursue. And I think the American people are hungry for that after nearly 7 years of the type of aimless leadership that we've had from Barack Obama. So I'm much more comfortable taking questions. So why don't we take questions? Who's got them? Yes, sir, in the back. There we go.
Hello, Governor. How you doing?
Good.
You mentioned entitlement reform. A couple of thoughts that I had. How do you feel about work for a welfare check? Or perhaps means testing Social Security benefits? Or what would you do to prevent SSDI from going bankrupt? And what are your thoughts on reforming Medicare, Medicaid?
Well, I swear I didn't know he was going to ask that. I gave a big speech on Tuesday about that. Yes, means testing for Social Security, yes, we should do it. And it seems to me that if you're making over $200,000 a year in retirement income, you don't need to get Social Security. Social Security should be an insurance policy against poverty for the elderly. And we don't want any of our elderly living in poverty, living out their later years in poverty. But think about it. If you have $200,000 in annual retirement income, that means at a minimum you've got about $4 million saved. That's throwing off that kind of income. Fact is, we have to make choices in this country. And on the disability insurance program, which is going to go bankrupt by 2016, we've said let's follow a program that they have in the Netherlands, which is before you go on disability, you have to develop a rehabilitation plan and engage in a rehabilitation plan to get yourself better and get yourself back to work. Let's provide tax incentives for businesses that are willing to hire those folks back after they do their rehabilitation program. And let's make the system more streamlined, more effective, and let's tighten the rules for getting on disability in the first place. Think about this on disability. There have been some months in this administration where more people have gone on to Social Security disability than have gotten a job. That's outrageous. And that's why the system is near bankruptcy. And I think we should put everybody to work who's able-bodied and can work. And so all of the things that underpin what I talked about on Social Security, I said too, if people are going to work past the age of 62, no more payroll tax after the age of 62. If If you want to work past the age of 62, we want to encourage that. We want to encourage folks as we live longer. If you want to work past 62, you've paid enough in payroll tax. And let's eliminate that for post past the age of 62. America needs to be working. America needs to be working. That's the way we're going to get our GDP growing. That's the way we're going to get our economy moving again. And we need to encourage people of all ages to be working hard, and contributing to our economy. So, and we have, as I said, 12 different points on Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I won't go through all of them now because I went through all of them at St. Anselm's on Tuesday, but they're available to you. You can see all of them. And they're real ideas. It's not saying like, well, I think we should do something on Social Security and I'll get back to you. These are real ideas. And, you know, I've had a lot of people say, well, why would you possibly want to suggest those things? Because we have to. We have to. And if you want to start a national conversation, let's start one that matters. All right. Yes, ma'am, right there.
Ma'am. Well, this isn't my question, but it goes on what you just said. Some people that are on Social Security disability can't work. I mean, our son has Asperger's syndrome, and he's 24, but like he can never hold a job, so.
Well, and then that's what it's for.
He needs that.
Well, that's what it's for. Well, what I think this gentleman's talking about, and what I'm saying is, you know, Social Security disability should be there for the people who need it. The same way Social Security should be there for the people that need it. Medicare should be there for everyone who wants to participate. My point is, for those who are gaming the system, it's bankrupting the system. And we don't have enough money to pay for all this. So we agree. For someone like your son, it needs to be there. That's what the program was set up for, was to deal with issues like that, not to have some months where you have more people going on disability than you have getting a job in this country. So you go ahead with your question.
I just wanted to make sure that you understood.
I do.
Because a lot of people don't understand that, you know. But my real question was on immigration. What do you think we need to do about what would you do about all the illegal immigrants that we have in this country taking jobs away from Americans who need the jobs? And also, what would you do about securing our borders?
Listen, on securing our borders, we'll start there and we'll work backwards. On securing our borders, the executive branch's job is to execute, is to do the things that you're supposed to do to protect our country. And one of the most important things you have to do is to protect the sovereignty and the security of the country. If you're President of the United States, that's what you need to do. And so in securing the border, I'm not somebody who's for building a wall from one end to the other. I don't think that that's smart. I don't think it's efficient or effective. There's lots of different ways we can do it, with manpower, with some fences, and with some surveillance, electronic equipment, and others. But the other way that you do it, by the way, is when you set up a fair system in this country that actually works, you then go to employers and say, and if you employ people who are here illegally, you're going to be gone after. You know, folks come here to work, and you can't have it just way. We can't just have it one way where we say we're going to build a wall and that's going to solve the problems. Walls can be gotten over. The reason people come here is, as you pointed out, to work. And so if we have employers now where we're going to clamp down on folks who are hiring people in this manner, once we set up a fair system that everybody is signed on to, well then I think you're going to really decrease the amount of people who want to come here if they know if you come here you're not going to get employed. You're not going to work. And I will tell you this, I'm not someone who believes that for the people who are here already, that they're going to self-deport. Not something that I think is going to happen. And the fact is, for our society, we don't have enough law enforcement people to round up 10 or 12 million people, whatever number you want to use. So we better get together as a party first, and then as a country, and decide how we deal with these problems in a way that makes sense. And there has been no consensus because there's been no leadership from the White House at all. And now the president does executive orders that, in my view, are illegal, which is why I joined the lawsuit opposing the executive action. And it's an abdication of leadership. You know, the person in charge can't say, I don't want to work with the Congress. He's got to work with the Congress, and now he's got a Republican Congress. And let's remember something. He could have tried to fix this problem before when he had a Democratic Congress. He didn't fix it then either. And so we need, whoever the Congress is going to be in 2017, if not before, although I have no confidence this president will do it, we need to get together and come to a consensus on how to deal with this and bring our country together, not split our country apart. And so that's the way I would go about doing it. Yes, sir, right there.
Hi. As someone who just turned 63 on tax day, I like your payroll tax proposal.
There you go.
But in all seriousness, you're up here saying what I would have asked all the candidates. Everyone wants to grow the economy, but the GDP and our national debt are perilously close to each other. And every economist, past and now, will tell you that's a very scary place to be.
Yep.
I don't think just entitlement reform is enough. And people say, gee, a 1%, let's start in the right direction. I think we need more reduction of the government. And if so, what would you cut out? What would you reduce? Where would you basically make some of the government people unemployed?
Well, we've done, let's remember a couple of statistics. I know you say you don't think entitlement reform is enough, but remember that the numbers are that in federal spending, 71% of federal spending is on entitlements, and 29% is on everything else. So, you know, it's a lot of it. And the reason we haven't dealt with this, and the reason I believe we have some of the additional trillions and trillions of dollars in debt that we have, is not only the expansion of the government under Barack Obama, but also the refusal to deal with those issues. You know, in the last 25 years, Medicaid has grown over 800%, while the economy in the last 25 years has grown 200%. Now, I was a political science major, not a math major, but even a political science major can do that math, okay? Even I can do that math. It doesn't work. Let me tell you what we did in New Jersey, and I'll give you an indication of what I think needs to be done on a national level. As I said off the top, when I came in, we had a $29 billion budget and an $11 billion deficit. We went through the budget line by line, and we cut 800 programs in order to balance the budget. We did not raise taxes on the people of New Jersey, and haven't for the 5.5 years that I've been governor. And so you had, so I'm going to stand up here off the top of my head and do the, you know, let's go through the federal budget and start cutting programs. What you have to have is the will and the resolve to be able to do it. And the only way you'll know if someone does is to look at what they've done before. Have they just talked about it, or have they actually done it? And so in New Jersey, we've actually done it. And now we've had 6 years in a row of balanced budgets, gone from 13% of one-shot non-recurring revenues down to 3%. That means you're eliminating the structural deficit as well. But I will tell you that cutting alone is not going to fix this problem. We have to grow this economy at 4% or better, because we are not going to cut our way out of an $18 trillion problem. We're not going to grow our way out of an $18 trillion problem if that's an either-or proposition. It has to be both. And you have to be resolved to be able to do that. And that's why I led with entitlements. Because if you're going to try to deal with the fiscal problems of our country, why would you go first to the place where 29% of your spending is rather than where 71% of your spending is? It's just logical. But it's politically risky, because you're going to turn 63. You like my payroll tax idea, but there are going to be some other people who don't like some of the other ideas. But you know what? I didn't run for governor of New Jersey to be elected prom king. Okay? I'm not looking to be the most popular guy in the world. I'm looking to be the most respected one. And the way you do that is to put forward real ideas. Yes, sir, right there.
Governor, thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
My name is Juan Pablo Andrade. I'm the Vice Chairman of the Latino National Republican Coalition of Long Island, New York. Common Core is an issue very close to my heart, and I wanted to know what your stance is on Common Core, and if you were president right now, or when you're elected president, what you would do with Common Core.
Well, first off, Common Core, before the Obama administration, was a state-by-state proposition, right, done by the governors. And the federal government really had very little role in it. And then the Obama administration came in and started to federalize that program. My predecessor started to implement Common Core before I got in. I finished it. And I can tell you now that what we found in New Jersey, that the implementation and the effectiveness of Common Core is really open to question. And so just 4 months ago, I put together a group of parents and teachers and administrators to come back to me and say, listen, we've always had high standards in New Jersey that we developed ourselves, and I want to know what you think we should be doing to get buy-in to get higher standards in New Jersey that's not having to do with Common Core. And let them come back, and they're going to come back to me in the next 2 to 3 weeks with their recommendations about what they think we should do. What I'm very concerned about is the further education gets away from the local community, the more difficult it is for parents to affect that education. And as a parent of 4 children, 2 in college, 2 still in junior high school and elementary school, the most important people to a child's education, more important than the teacher, more important than the principal, are their parents. And so if we want to have parents have buy-in to whatever standards we're setting and have them be part of the team to raise our children up to those standards, they better be involved in deciding what those standards should be. And so that's my view on it. Thanks. Let's see. Yes, sir, right here.
Governor, I want to ask a question about you, okay?
Sure.
I like your frankness. I like your proposals. It says in the Bible, the truth will set you free. Do you think by speaking truth to power, not a personality contest, you can get elected?
I don't know. But if I run, we're sure as heck going to find out. Because I'm not changing. I mean, listen, this is it. I get this question all the time, not exactly yours, but the one about, well, especially from the media, Governor, do you have to change? Do you have to mellow? Do you have to, round off a couple of those rough edges of yours? I don't know what they're talking about in terms of rough edges, right? Here's the fact is this. I'm a Republican in New Jersey. Come and try that for a couple of days, okay? We haven't elected a Republican to the United States Senate in 42 years. It is the longest streak of any state in America not to elect a Republican to the U.S. Senate. 42 years. This is not a place where Republicans go to grow, prosper, and win elections. Right? So, if people are waiting for me to be the nicest guy in the room, the most subtle guy in the room, if I had waited for that, I wouldn't be in this room. All right? So, but in the end, I will tell you, I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know the answer to your question. I don't know whether you can speak these kind of truths, lead with entitlement reform, and take off after folks the way I have and be elected. I don't know. But I will tell you this. One, I won't change. I'm going to be who I am, so that if you ever do elect me to something else, you'll know exactly who the person is sitting behind that desk. Second, I am not going to tack and move and flip-flop and pander because I'm looking in your eyes trying to figure out what is it he wants to hear, tell it to you, and then pray to God that you don't remember what I said when I go and do the opposite, okay? That's not who I am, who I've ever been, and who I'm going to be. And so this could wind up being a really grand experiment. But I think it's one, given the condition our country is in right now, that might just be worth taking. Thanks for the question. Yes, sir, right there.
Glad you're here, and appreciate your frankness and just willing to take all the questions. My name's Stephen Hill from Bread for the World, and with 50 million Americans struggling with food insecurity issues and more veterans dealing with food insecurity issues, do you think we'll hear more from candidates, 2016 presidential candidates, talking about the issues of hunger and poverty and some real meaningful solutions to these issues?
Well, we should. I will tell you that part of that is what underpins the entitlement reform proposals that I made this week. Because the underpinning of those proposals are that these programs that we provide through the government should first and foremost take care of those folks who need them the most. And we should be trying to make sure that we don't have the elderly living in poverty, that we don't have the elderly having to decide between going to a doctor and buying food, that we make sure that people are going to get health care who are indigent, not through an emergency room, which is the most inefficient, ineffective, and expensive way to provide health care, but that they should do it in a managed care situation where they're seeing a doctor in an office or in a clinic. It's much more efficient and effective for their health, and as a result will be much, much better for the taxpayer. But those are the kind of tough conversations we have to deal with the issues you're talking about. Because anything else you might want to do to deal with those issues has to come out of that 29%. We're underselling our national defense right now. We're going from a 600-ship Navy down to a 260-ship Navy in a world that's more dangerous than at almost any time in my life. We are now, right now, our Air Force is flying the most antiquated from both a hardware and software perspective set of planes than they have in the Air Force's history. And that's just national defense that we're not investing in. And the programs and the issues you're talking about, if we want to invest in those, if we want to make tuition more affordable for families around this country, if we want to make sure we cut taxes so people can keep more money in their own pockets rather than sending it to Washington and whatever your state capital is and whatever state you live in, we better deal with this other stuff as well. And so we have to have this kind of honest conversation, because if we don't, nothing else will be possible. And I heard someone else say the other day, oh, before we take something away from someone, we should eliminate all government waste. Well, listen, everybody, I don't think there's anybody in this room who would raise their hand and say they're for government waste. Include me in on that. I am opposed to government waste, okay? That is a bold, wild statement, isn't it? What amazing leadership I just showed by saying I'm against government waste and I want to cut it. Anybody who comes up here and says that, boo them off the stage. Boo them off the stage. Because of course everybody's opposed to government waste, and of course you're going to do the best you can to try to cut it. And then after that, then it's time to get to work. Because it's all the other stuff that's bankrupting us. Government waste contributes to it, absolutely. And we've done, as I said in New Jersey, a lot of things to combat that. We have 8,500 fewer employees today in the New Jersey government than we had the day I walked in as governor. That's making government smaller, right? And so, but to deal with the issues in the depth that you want them dealt with, we better deal with these other things first. Because we're bankrupting our nation and we're mortgaging our future in the process, and we're going to have more people going hungry.
Hey, Governor, we have time for one last question.
All right, one last question. Let's see, let's go over here. I didn't go to a younger person yet. So.
Hello, Governor. I'm Christian Slayton. I'm with the College Republicans at Dartmouth, and I agree, to start on a positive note, with a lot of your social policies for Social Security, but one thing that has concerned me recently is a lot of news articles about New Jersey's job growth. I think it was 49th in the nation last year, and I just want to give you the opportunity to just take a chance and answer that criticism that's been in the news a lot lately.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. Let me say first that when I became governor of New Jersey in January of 2010, unemployment was 10%. We had had an entire decade of the 2000s without any job growth. In the 8 years before I became governor, the state government increased taxes and fees 115 times in 8 years. There is no doubt in my mind that there is a direct correlation between the fact that we are the second highest taxed state in America and the fact that while I'm proud of the fact that we've grown 175,000 new private sector jobs since I've been governor, that we need to do better. Here's part of the problem. You know, I've been able to persuade my Democratic legislature to do lots of things, to cap property taxes, to reform pensions and benefits, to reform teacher tenure, to be able to pass 6 balanced budgets in a row without raising taxes by vetoing 5 income tax increases, additional ones. The one thing I haven't been able to convince them to do is to cut individual taxes in New Jersey. You will see the states that are growing are the ones that cut taxes. The ones that are not growing are the ones that haven't, or the ones that aren't growing fast enough. And so, you know, as governor of New Jersey, I would love, just for maybe a week, to either have a Republican legislature or be the emperor. One or the other. If I was, we would cut taxes, see jobs in the private sector growing even further and faster than they're growing now. But just remember one other thing. with the awful situation that we inherited. Remember, we had net no private sector job growth for a decade, from 2000 to 2009. And in the 5 years since I've been governor, we have 175,000 new private sector jobs. So in New Jersey, we're pretty proud of what we're doing. We're working hard to do it. Get me a Republican legislature, and we would finish the job. So thank you for your question. I want to thank all of you very much for letting me come today. I appreciate it. We'll see you again in New Hampshire soon.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Good, good.
Microphone's on.